harvest season staple. Pumpkins are part of the squash family and are a plant native to Canada and have been cultivated here for centuries. Similar to corn, the pumpkin was also brought to Europe, where the pumpkin, or pumpkin pie, was developed. Welcome to the Backwoods Kitchen. I'm your host, Holly Benison, and on today's episode, I'll be preparing an autumnal favorite from the Female Emigrant's Guide, pumpkin pie. This recipe takes a significant amount of time to prepare, with all the ingredients likely in your pantry already. There are 2 pumpkin pie recipes in the Female Emigrant's Guide, but I chose this one as it was submitted to Trail for the book by a woman in her community. She says, "I had this recipe from a Canadian lady who is celebrated for the excellence of her pumpkin pies. I can vouch for their goodness from my own experience." This footnote adds to Trail's narrative voice and highlights the many forms that sharing took in rural communities. I know I have recipes that I keep very close to my heart, and I wonder what would have inspired the skilled pie maker to share her method instead of keeping it a secret. Trail also adds at the end of the recipe that a pumpkin pie is within the power of any poor man's family to enjoy this luxury. If you do not grow this fruit, any neighbor will give you one for the asking. Pumpkins were traditionally planted alongside beans and corn, the other 2 sisters in the 3 sisters planting method. Trail notes in the guide her observations from this indigenous system of agriculture. Of what she learned, she writes, "Pumpkins are usually planted along with Indian corn. The broad leaves of the pumpkin spreading over the ground serves to shade it and retain its moisture for the benefit of the Indian corn, acting as a sort of wet nurse to the tender plant." In the meantime, the pie crust. Trail doesn't include a specific recipe, and you'll find that many cookbook authors in this time period assumed that you would know the basics, the puff paste being one of them. She also takes care to mention that this is not a covered pie, and that the crust simply lines your pie dish and nothing else. I'm draining the pumpkin outside in case I make a horrible mess. Got some modern safety additions, just to be safe. Success. The pumpkin is ready, so it's time to prepare the filling. 2 options are given: a standard filling or a rich filling using cream, more eggs, and lemon. I've opted for the former in this attempt to get a better understanding of how the base version of the pie would taste. Once mashed, the filling will end up having a custard-like consistency. With only a masher and a sieve, I will do the best that I can, but it's likely it will still end up being a bit stringy. The rest of the flavor and texture comes from adding milk, eggs, ginger, sugar, and cinnamon. You could also add nutmeg, but Trail notes that ginger and cinnamon are preferable to any other spice for pumpkin pies. Now this was an interesting bit of research that I came across. Contrary to contemporary tradition, pumpkin pies were not served for our version of Thanksgiving. In fact, Thanksgiving as we know it today wasn't officially celebrated in Canada until the 20th century in an effort to raise national unity after the First World War. A Thanksgiving meal in Trail's time would have referred to a gathering or meal celebrating a milestone, like a successful harvest, family gathering, or significant personal achievement that could have happened at really any time of the year. Meaning that pumpkin pie could be served virtually any time that pumpkin was in season, and if you dehydrated the pumpkin, literally any time of the year. The tradition of serving pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving fell hand in hand over the passage of time and the creation of the holiday as we know it today. But what a perfect pie for fall. After all this work and many hours over the fire, I think a taste test is well deserved. I've got my pumpkin pie. This is a pretty big achievement for me. I've never made a pumpkin pie from scratch before, so fingers crossed, but I think it should be pretty good. Yeah. Some people might not like this, but because it's not fully pureed, just because I had a masher, I chose not to go through the sieve because I find that the consistency was pretty as Trail described already, so I cut that step out. This still kind of has like little chunks of pumpkin in it, which makes it just feel so real. All of these recipes so far have kind of been a hit. I've really enjoyed them all, so there's another one if you want to try it out. For Thanksgiving even, or just for the harvest season in general. Cheers.